My sisters and brothers, today we celebrate the feast of St. Martin de Porres. And as we think of this saint, the first black saint from the Americas, who was canonized in 1962 by Pope St. John the 23rd. And as we think of him, obviously there's so many things we can say about his life. You know that he had a noble Spanish father, and his mother was a free slave. And so he was a mulatto. And so he was rejected. His father rejected him. Society rejected him. There was a lot of prejudice against him. But the kid always wanted to serve. He always wanted to serve. And even when he was 13 years old, he was already, in those years, in the 1500s, if you learned to be a barber, you were also a doctor. You pulled teeth, you did all the things that you could do as a doctor. So he learned to be a barber. And he wanted so much to become a religious. And so he went to the Dominicans, but at that time, there was a law against accepting mulattoes into the congregation in Peru. And so he had no choice. But when he was living there with the brothers, after 9-10 years, they saw how fervent, how holy this man was, that the prior of the monastery said, forget the law, we're going to allow him to become a Dominican brother. And he became a Dominican brother. Lived to be 59 years old when he died. As I look at Martin's life, I think there are some things that are really important for us and some things that we can really learn from him. And the very first thing is, all of our life is about growing in charity, growing in love. And I think Martin gives us a perfect example of that. It's interesting, one day he picked up old man off the street who had ulcers all around. It was sick. There was no place for him. So he picked him up and he brought him to the monastery and put him in his bed, in his own bed. And one of the monks in the monastery said to him, you know, you have no business doing that. He's a dirty old man. And Martin looked at him and he said, I think charity and compassion are more important than cleanliness. Charity and compassion are more important than cleanliness. Another time, he was helping some poor people, and the prior got angry at him for disobedience. And he said to the prior, I'm sorry, my ignorance, I apologize, but I thought that charity was more important than obedience. Love was more important than obedience. This deep sense that we were made to love and care for each other characterized his life. And I think he challenges us to ask ourselves, does it characterize our lives? The second thing I think that is amazing about him was this incredible humility. He took the simplest jobs and the humblest jobs. He was often mistreated, even in the monastery, because he was a mulatto. And many of the brothers were prejudiced against him and treated him harshly. And one day, the monastery was in deep financial problems. And so the prior had a meeting. What can we do to help our financial problems? And Martin de Porres raised his hand. And he said, I'm a mulatto. I'm not worth anything. Why don't you sell me as a slave, and then you will get the money you need for the monastery? Wow. Talk about humility. I'm not worth anything. Sell me as a slave, and you could get the money for the monastery. And the third incredible thing about Martin was his deep, deep union with God that brought him into more service. He would go around collecting alms, money from the people in the streets. And with that money, he would feed 160 people a day. Any money he got, he would buy food to feed 160 people a day, the poor who had nothing. He opened up orphanages for kids who were in the street, found a place for them to go and opened an orphanage. When the epidemic hit Peru and they had 60 novices in the monastery, they locked them in a room because they didn't want anybody else to get sick. Martin had the gift of bilocation. And so he would go, they say, right through the doors and into the epidemic where the monks were, and he would take care of them. The Dominicans were, and he would take care of them. This great concern for others. And this love for Jesus. They would find him many times elevation in ecstasy before the Blessed Sacrament because of how he loved Jesus. I think, my sisters and brothers, as we reflect on the life of Martin de Porres today and what the gospel says today, he wasn't worried about those who were going to invite him back. He just simply took care of the least. And because he took care of the least, he is one of the great. God bless you.